Hi, my name is Nate Lessler, and this is for Hyperactive Studios, and we're going to go over PHP. This will be video 9 now. So we coded up this contact db form 3.php from last time, and what we're going to do is we're just going to copy and paste all this text in here. Just scroll down, hold down Shift, click down here, select all, hit Control C to copy it, and then you're going to create a new one called contact db form 2.php, or you could just save this as contact db form 2.php for this one, and that will work too. But otherwise, paste it in here and then go file save as contact db form 2.php. Alright, and then so we get all the same stuff as before, but we get some extra stuff too on top of that. And some of the stuff we're going to get into is these other libraries that we're going to need. So we're going to need a couple more of these. It's not going to be enough with what we had. And these are additional libraries for doing testing and checking to make sure forms are properly filled out. You can get it from jquery.org again. You'll have to hunt on there to find them, but these are the magical names for them. You can also Google search them to pull them up too. So we're going to need to do this one right here. Notice it comes right after our jquery.js one. And we'll get into jquery.validate.js. Now, this one lets you validate the client side whether it's one typed in something correctly or not. And so let's just do these tests and checks to make sure that everything's being done correctly and that there's nothing that's being overlooked, more or less. We'll need some other libraries to go with it, though, for doing this. It doesn't work just on its own with this validate. You also need additional methods.js. And then we're going to be doing some other ones. Unfortunately, validate doesn't cover everything, and so we'll need masked input also. So we'll need to have jquery.masked-input-1.3.min.js. You can see if they have a newer version. That'd be cool if they did. But copy and paste that one in too from before. So you're basically doing the same thing, but you're changing the name here as you copy and paste each one. And then we have the jQuery watermark.min.js. Alright, so you're going to need that one also. And then we're going to need jQuery form.form.js. So we'll need that one also. And we still have our UI min one from before. And we still have our templates one. So that didn't change. But those are all the ones we need to add. So you'll need to add that to your project. And you'll need to hunt those down, download them, and save them into a folder called JS, and then put a folder inside that folder called plugins, and put each one of these JavaScript plugins into that plugins folder. I created a plugins folder because I don't like having all that code slammed together. So when you come to your file directory structure, basically you come in here like this. You'll have this JS folder. You can also have a CSS folder. You can stylize your code like so. And then, you got your jQuery and you got your plugins, and then you can come in here, and then here's all your different files, whatever. But again, you'll have to download these so that you'll have them. Otherwise, it won't work. And even when you have these, you have to get things loaded in the right order. So it means you'll probably have to play around with what order in which these load. You might have to change it up in order to get them to work for you with your code. Because believe it or not, the order in which they load matters, and you just can't load in libraries in any order you like. And what will work on one page in a certain order may not work on another page in the same order. So you might have to move the order around, dealing with different browsers having problems and things of that nature. So you'll need to thoroughly test this on each browser to make sure it works on all browsers, and that your loading order is great and works. Otherwise, you'll get nothing. You'll just end up with nothing working on it. So it can be trying to do that. So first we're only going to worry about the validate, and then we'll do the mask input in the next file. But we're just going to build up from here. And the idea is just to get this working. And basically you come in here and you do your document ready as before. Nothing changes on that, but here's your new entry. And so we're going to say contact form. So we're targeting the form based on the ID. Now remember that form ID is all the way down here, and it's right here where we named it. So contact form right here, and that's specifying this input form that we were using a second ago on the page. All right, cool. And then we need to create a category called rules. So we say rules colon, and we're going to do open curly brace on that. And we're going to say which ones we want to target for what rules that we want to target them on. So if I say email contact, this is corresponding back again to the ID number down here on the different ones. And so we have our company here as far as it goes. But check it out, email contact. Yep, there's our 4, and then check it out. There's our ID, email contact, including the name, email contact. And so this lets us target these different fields in our form with certain values for them. So very, very cool. We can require that the email be inputted. We could do this with name also, if so desired. We can say that it has to be an email address. So if they try to put in something that's not an email address, then we can stop them right here and now. We're also requiring that it's a max length of 100. That really matters a lot, actually, because what a hacker will try to do is overload it. And so you need to limit how much they're allowed to input it into it. So otherwise, they will paste far more than what your application can handle in an attempt to overrun it, doing a buffer overflow or something of that nature, so they can run whatever code they want on your server and make it do whatever they want, which is a very bad thing. So you have to put in numbers like this max length here of 100 in order to limit what they can do and get away with. Close curly brace, comma, PayPal contact, colon. So again, we're going to do it for PayPal contact. Again, this is an email address, so I need to say true on that. And then max length, but I'm not requiring it. So, but I do have it set to that. In case of the fax number, I'm not going to do it because, well, it's going to be handled by the mask. So let's put a comment in there that that's what's going on. Company phone number, of course, I wouldn't have to list it at all, but I just did it for, visual sake, so you realize that nothing's missing. Company phone, cell phone. Again, we'd also want to do one for our name, but we didn't done one yet. And then we have a website contact here, and then we're going to say it's a URL too. Colon, true. It is the URL. It has a max length of 100. So they can only type a URL in here. They can't type anything else. And it has to have a max length of 100 is the maximum they're allowed to type in there. Alphanumeric, colon, true. A max length of 100. And this means that they can only put letters and numbers in here. They can't put any special symbols. This helps keep down for attacks so that people can't type different things in as an attack to the server. And then we are also limiting it to where it can only be 100 characters long to stop another type of attack. So, they could sit there and try to do Sql injection, where they basically try to, instead of typing in a street number or street contact, they type in basically SQL code in an attempt to delete your database or delete records from it or do other terrible, horrible things. And it's what's called SQL Injection Attack, and they do it just for the fun of it, basically. Or to basically tell companies if they don't pay them so much money or whatever, they're going to destroy their database or whatever at their company. So, there's some terrible things like that goes on. So we need to stop that. And we can do it client side, but we also need to do it server side too. This is how you do it client side with Ajax. So we can stop it up front right away with this, and then they can bypass it by turning off JavaScript, so you have to also protect it on the back end too. You need to do it in both places so you can get immediate feedback to people when they're not doing something they're supposed to. Not everybody does this. Most of the people who screw up on this are not going to be hackers. They're going to be people who can't figure out how to fill out a form. So realize that's the case. City contact here, colon. Letters only, true, comma, max length 100. State contact, letters only. This means only letters, no numbers allowed. Because again, for a city, I would only want alpha number letters. Would not want any numbers in there. Same thing goes for a state. I want to be true for letters. Minimum length is 2. Maximum length is 2. Means they're only allowed to type 2 letters. Can't type anything less than 2 letters, and they can't type anything more than 2 letters. So that really narrows it down. Same thing here for zip. In this case, I decided I want the zip to be a maximum of 5 characters long and a minimum of 5 characters long. So it lets me do that. Notice there's no comma at the end of any of these entries here that end on this, and also on this last entry here. And so if you do put one, it is an error, and your page just won't work properly. Close curly brace, parentheses, semicolon, as far as that goes. And then it's our same old click submit. So that's the only thing we need to add to this. And that will let you validate the page if someone's typing in the wrong thing. And then if you get this working, everything, you should be able to test this and see that, in fact, you could try to type in the wrong thing and it won't allow it. And you'll get an error message. So it's very, very cool. It's very, very powerful and extremely useful. All right. So there's that one. Let's do the next one. So copy and paste this, or save this one now, and then save it again as just contact dbform.php, which is the main one we've been building up to. Don't have to do anything more of these libraries here. And then we're going to do this masked input now. So above the validate, we're going to add $, open parentheses, open quotes, #, company phone, close quotes, close parentheses, .mask, open parentheses, open quotes, open parentheses, 9999, close parentheses. This means we have a range of 0 to 9, which means all numbers. And we're doing that per character. So 999, close parentheses, space, 999-9999, four of them, close parentheses, close quotes, close parentheses, semicolon. And we're going to do the same thing again for cell phone. So copy and paste the first one, change it to cell phone. Copy and paste that one, change it to fax number. Copy and paste that one, change it to zip contact, .mask, and then we're saying 99999 on that, so it gives 5 numbers there ranging from 0 to 9, and then we're going to specify letters too. So we're going to say state contact here, so copy and paste it, state contact now. I'm asking input AA, so this means you can do letters from A to Z, uppercase and lowercase, and they can only put 2 letters in there, and that's all they can put is just letters. And so that's how we can lock it down. If they try to type anything else, it won't let them. As they start typing in the numbers, it will automatically have the parentheses there, and they'll start filling in the numbers. And it'll automatically jump them over here to this next part if they type in the numbers, and automatically jump them over here as they type in the numbers. So they don't have to hit tab or anything. They just start typing the numbers, and it just automatically starts propagating correctly across the whole interface, across that input. And this is really, really cool. It's really nice, and this also helps lock down your security better. And that is how you can do validation client side with jQuery, Ajax, your form, etc., all that. And it helps reduce back and forth between the database server and client, and basically makes your application more interactive and run quicker because you don't have to get responses back from the server. So because of that, it's going to go a lot faster. And it's also going to bring a lot less traffic and a lot less processing server side too. Cool, cool. All right, let's go over to the next part now. Okay, so now we're going to create another file. I'm going to call this one connect class.php. So this lets me go over classes, but also show you something you're very familiar with, and that is this database programming that we've been doing. And so, actually, let me load a few other things here too while I'm at it. And we also have some test files we're going to work with here. And yeah, I'll go ahead and grab those two. Why not? All right. Go down, please. Not really click. Oh my gosh. There we go. Now what? Come on, open. What? I don't know. That's something else. Okay. There it goes. Whatever. I don't know why I was doing that, but I don't care. Alright, so I'm going to be working here with this connect db_connect class.php. And basically it's a combination of what you coded previously with the connection and the login, db login, db connection. .php. So if you want to, you can grab some of the code from there, as we're going to code this up into a class now. And what this does is lets us do what's called object-oriented programming. And this is where you can treat, instead of having just like a little variable like let's say car name equals car, like Honda, and then or manufacturer, whatever. And then something like number of wheels equals 4, and then number of doors equals 2, and so things of this nature. They're all separate variables. They're not connected with each other. They're not tied together anyway. Instead, this classes allows us to actually have some organization to our coding, which is really nice. And it lets us package things take a lot of different things and put it into one package, if you will. Things that go together. So you can treat things as one object or one element. That's why we call them objects in these classes. So for instance, I could create a car class, and that car class would have things like the name associated with the car class. So I could say like car, like arrow name, and then the name equals something like, I'll tell you what, let me show you. I'll show you an example of it with the connections. Yeah. So literally, I can say that we create a new object here from the class. In this case, the class is going to be dbConnect that we're defining, and then I can just say connect arrow database equals users, and then the username for our connection for our database is Nate, and then the password for it is password, and then I can say echo out the host, which we already set inside the class, but we could also set it in here if we wanted to too. And then I can test my connection. This is all coming from this one variable called connect, and it's an object, and so it has all these different properties to it that we define when we define a class object. So it makes it a lot easier to code because everything comes together in this one nice neat package, and then we can just reuse it as many times as we want. So every time we want another database or whatnot to connect to, wherever, we can just create another database connection object. So we can just do another new db connect, open close parenthesis semicolon, that's another variable. And then we have all these properties for dealing with that server. So it just makes everything nice, organized, neat, easy to follow, easy to work with. Man, there's a lot of great things about this. It also cuts down on how much code we have to write, and minimizes a bunch of stuff like that. Definitely promotes code reuse, structures the code in a very good logical way, where you can reuse code and write minimal amount of work, do minimal amount of work and minimal amount of code. It cuts down on errors. It saves you a lot of headaches. And trust me, anything you can cut down errors on PHP, all for it. So yeah, definitely this is great. Let me go ahead and just move over that test DB so we can kind of bounce back and forth between it. So that will help if we can. All right, cool. So now we have our connect DB right next to our class here. So this is why we didn't have to find localhost, because we actually set it originally when we did this database here. So I say $host here equals localhost. That's why I'm just like displaying it, because I don't need to actually set it because it's already set to localhost. Now, if I had a remote database server that was on a whole nother computer, then I would need to set host. But by default, most of the time, well, not most of the time, a good portion, not even a good portion, it depends on the size. If you're talking about a small website, database server is going to be on the same computer with your Apache web server. But if you're talking about doing it on a bigger site, the database server is going to be a separate computer, a separate server. So we're going to need to do more of that, basically. So we set it up to where it's already default for people who have small websites, and then people who have bigger websites would have to enter it in anyways. So there's no point in there's no way you could guess what that would be. So we just basically set it for what local small, basically, websites would need, and this takes care of them. So we can at least take care of them with this. Alright, so public database here equals, and set single quotes here, semicolon. Public $username equals, set single quotes here, semicolon. Public $password equals, set single quotes here, semicolon. And so by making them public here, it means that we can access it when the object's created. So that means we can access database, we can access username, we can access password, we can access host, all this stuff. And so we can get and set it. So it means I can assign a value to it, and I can also get a value from it. So here we're displaying it, we're getting the value of host, and here we're assigning database, username, and password. So public lets us do that. Now protected is a special one. Protected, we could not either set or get the values from connection or select here. We wouldn't be allowed to do that. And the reason why is because it's protected. But if I were to do what's called inheritance and I were to pass this as like the base, which this is, to a whole nother class, then I would be able to access these variables in another class. So that allows me to still make use of them when I inherit them. And we actually are going to do that a number of times here. So they do actually need to be protected, and it kind of matters. If I had them set to private instead, which is another type, when I go to inherit this class, then it's not possible for me to access it. Or not this class, but this particular variable. And variables inside of a class are referred to as properties. So this would be a property of a class. This variable is called a property. And since it's set to private, it would only be accessible within this class. Meaning that if I inherited that class, so meaning if I inherit, I'll show you this, I inherit this class in, say, this class over here, which I do by saying extends db connect, then anything private that was inside of our db connect class here, or db connect, is not going to be accessible. So anything private there, I would not be able to access it at all through inheritance. And so that would be a problem. That would be a problem indeed. So in that case, we're going to want to keep it protected, so that way we can't access it. I'll show you what protected does. We can access it when we inherit it into another class like this. We can still access it, but we won't be able to access it when we create a new object. So when we create a new object of it, we wouldn't be able to access it here. Only public members and methods, properties can be accessed. Same members that can be referred to both properties and methods. Methods is the term used for functions that are part of a class. So if you have a function like this one right here, test connect, and it's part of a class, this is referred to as a method, whereas these are referred to as properties. And that's just a universal terminology for that stuff. It's used in programming in general, with object-oriented programming everywhere, basically. Alright, so that's how that works. And so we're going to set the connection to false and the selection to false starting out here. I also showed what it would look like if you had a constructor, but I really didn't have anything to put in here. I am not wanting to do the connection up front. I'm wanting to do that elsewhere, and I'm might need to overwrite this class and thus overwrite the constructor, and so that would be a problem. So because of that, I need to basically have this as a separate function that I then call elsewhere in another class. So I actually don't want this to be part of the constructor. Don't want a constructor in this case. But if you wanted to make a constructor, this is how you do it. You say function space, and then check this out, underscore construct, open close parentheses. Now let's define a constructor with no variables being passed in, so no properties, and no parameters. I should say no parameters. Could be properties too as parameters. Well, no, it wouldn't. Yeah, sorry, no, parameters be separate from properties. Yes, so only parameters, not properties. And then I can point to myself. You might have noticed, you can see this $sign this. You're like, what is that? Well, this is a self-referencing variable. I'm not going to get into this in detail. I do get into this in detail in my C++ programming videos for game development, when I'm going over how to program a game engine from scratch. I do get into this. I go into how it dereferences the pointer object to then point to the next property in the chain. I'm not going to get into it. But essentially what this does, in layman's terms, what this does is this points to yourself. Then this right here is going to say, alright, it's me. This is me. Sometimes some of the languages will use the term self, so you have to say self instead of this. But in the case of C++ or wherever, the word is this, and PHP is borrowing from C++ in this regard. So this variable is pointing to our own class. So we're pointing to ourselves. So I'm saying this class, and I'm saying arrow pointing. This is a pointer, right? And it's pointing to the property called connection. So what is a pointer? Well, a pointer is it's a special variable actually. It basically has the ability to store both data and a memory location of that data, both. So when we use this arrow, it's actually pointing to the memory location of this variable connection, and then we're assigning a value to that memory location. Essentially, is how that works. I'm not going to get into any more depth than that for this video. This video is not an upper level programming breakdown. I'd go over that in the other videos that are higher level than this. This is more basic, and I'm not going to get into complex pointer manipulation inside of PHP. I don't even know if you can really do complex pointer manipulation in PHP. I've yet to see that, but that's what this and the arrow is coming from. It's coming from C++. You can do advanced pointer manipulation in C++. It makes programs run insanely fast when you do. You have to be very careful with it because you can basically crash the application or the computer if you don't do it right. So, and it can be difficult to do it right. Keeping track of all the memory, if you're doing, it's not a problem if you're just doing simple stuff with the pointer. It's easy to keep track of then. But if you start trying to do advanced things where you have multiple objects sharing the same data in memory and they're all accessing it, and then you have to determine when everything is done accessing that, and it can be totally different depending on multiple events occurring, multiple things happening, accessing that same piece of data, then it can be a real problem. Because if you delete that object from memory, if you delete that data from memory before everything is done using it, then you'll get what's called, and you've seen this before, you've seen this pop up, illegal operation has been performed. That means illegal memory operation, meaning that the program tried to access some data that it was still using from another variable, but it thought in its logic that it was done using it, and so it deleted it from memory before it was really done using it from another variable, because this other variable was done using it, or this other object or whatever was done using it, and so it got returned back to the operating system. Once the memory gets returned back to the operating system, it's no longer the property of that program, and then another program can use that memory. So at that point, if that program tries to access that memory that's been no longer accessible to the program, then it's called an illegal operation. And when that happens, the application crashes. So of course you don't want your web server application to crash while you're using it. So you know, it gets complicated, but if you do it right, that's no problem. And if you forget to delete, you're like, oh well, just don't delete it, right? No, if you don't delete it, what happens is you get basically a memory leak, as it's called, and what happens is that basically you start allocating and creating using up RAM for different variables, but you're not releasing it, and so then you just use up all the RAM in the computer eventually, and then you can crash the computer and everything on it, all the applications, your application, everything. You can take the whole thing down if you're not careful. So it gets kind of complicated, and that's why Java and C# have gone away from doing memory handling, and they use garbage collectors for doing it. But they're slow. They're very slow compared to C++. So C++ is super fast, but that's what this is all coming from. That's what this pointer is, and that's what's going on with this. And we're not going to get into depth on how to manage this or anything. You don't need to, I don't think, in this, because I don't think you can do anything complex with this, to be honest. So I'm not seeing any complexity here for passing pointers and accessing them and accessing the data. But if you can access pointers or whatnot, they are extremely fast way of approaching computing, because you can just point directly to the memory address and you don't have to dig through all the data throughout that whole block of memory. So you can just point to where the block of memory is, and then you're good to go. And it's awesome. But it's also takes a lot of careful planning to make sure you don't misuse it. But anyways, that's what this is all about. Pun. No, but anyways, it points to this connection here. So this allows us to set this connection variable that we have protected up here. And we're going to set it to either true or false. Now, if this succeeds, if we're able to connect to the MySQL database, of course, then it's going to be true. And if it fails, then it's false. So then we're saying if it's not true, meaning that it's false, right? Then we're going to die. Couldn't connect to the database. Error. And we tell it what error is going to be. That's going to display the error message. We've already seen it earlier because we were dealing with that. Had to make a few corrections. Yep. So that was important. But here we are with this. Okay, so that's how it dies. Now it said else. If this did connect, then we select here at the DB, we select what database it is, right? And then we say test, and it's going to come back either true or false. So if it connected successfully, it's true, and if it didn't, it's false. It's set to selected. Remember, both of these were false by default, so we're overwriting those values now. And if it's not true, meaning that it's false, then, because if it's not false, then it's got to be true, which makes the statement then true. So then therefore it then does this code. In which case, then we die, we quit. It didn't work. So it couldn't select the database. MySQL underscore error, open close parentheses, semicolon. You might be going, well, wait a minute. Wouldn't we want to only do this if it's false? Yeah, well, we do, but remember, for an if statement to work, it has to be true, right? So if we say it's not true, meaning that it's false, then do this, basically. And that's the mentality and logic that's going behind that. Otherwise, once we're done here, we just return null otherwise, and we're good to go because we have nothing to return on this function. We set the values for our different variables, so it doesn't matter. We have nothing to return. So we don't have a void on here like we do in C++, but we just return nothing and we can go on. So you can leave this blank without the return null. It's optional here, but if you want a return, you have to return null on it with semicolon. Alright, so take the same code up here with this connect, copy it, and then paste it, and then name it test connect. And what this does is allows us to create a testing framework within our software. And this lets us test to see if our connection and all our stuff is working correctly. Because if it is, we can get some error messages and feedback as to what's going on. And just, even not even error messages, but we just get feedback to see what's happening with inside our framework. And this is a great way of creating a whole testing framework where we can see what's going on, what's wrong, and then we can switch it back from test to regular connections where it's invisible and everything's working behind the scenes. So when we need to get feedback as to what's going on and what's going wrong, we just put test in there. And I just did a very standard naming on this. So I just say test in front of any method that I want to become a test method. And so then I don't have to guess at what it's going to be called each time. For instance, connect here becomes test connect to test the connection. If I want to do a different one, like I want to do an insert, I will say test insert for it. If I want to do an update, I say test update. You get the idea. So if I go to use this library again, I don't have to remember, oh, for this one it's this name, and for this one it's this name, and for this one it's this. No, you don't want to do that, because then you'll end up having like umpteen different functions. You could have hundreds or thousands of functions that you have to memorize the exact names of. You don't want to do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to keep it standardized throughout everything, and then it'll just be really easy. It'll just be common sense. You won't have to even think about it. You'll have to learn very little to make it work, and it'll be really easy to maintain and update and keep working, because you just won't have a lot of stuff to deal with, a lot of extra things to think about. It minimizes that, and so it makes it a lot easier for you to wield it and make use of it and code quicker, because you have to look up less. And so if you have to look up less, you can code faster because you don't have to think about it, and because you don't have to hunt it down, because you can't remember several thousand different functions or something like that by name for different things for each little thing. So it minimizes what you have to remember, unless you focus more on your task at hand that you're coding, you're working on. Alright, so again, it's the whole this connection here equals MySQL connect here, this arrow host, comma this arrow username, comma this arrow password, close parentheses semicolon, echo $ this arrow connection dot single quotes br slash close well, it's the br tag. Anyways, and then if, and we say So we're outputting this. See, we're looking at what the result of our connection was. True or false. It's going to come back like that. And then right here we're going to get could not connect to database. And if it does connect to the database, it lets us know, hey, database connection successful. You realize there's a couple of different things that could fail along the way here. So we need to know what worked versus what didn't work along the line. So by doing this testing framework like this, we can see what is working and what isn't working. So right up here at the top here, we're going to say echo out database connection successful. Hey, it worked. We're good to go. So we're going to do a this here select here equals MySQL select DB here in this database here. And it's going to come back with the database connection. True or false? Did it work? Were we able to actually select our database? So it'll be the same thing inside of MySQL. It's typing in use space and then like users, that database. So this is a way of selecting a particular database to use it. Then you can start doing like show tables. You can insert. You can update. You can delete. Etc. Once you're inside the database. All right. So we say this here, select here, and if it was not true, if it's false, then couldn't select the database, and then we get the error message for that. Otherwise, with else here, we're going to say else, database selection successful, database queries ready. And so then we're good to go as far as that goes too. Return null, and so it lets us know that we were successful in that. And then if we're basically inheriting this in a whole nother class, then we'll know that all the connections went through properly, and then the problem is with what other thing that we have in there. So lets you narrow it down quickly and easily. Alright, we go here, our test DB connect here. We're going to need to type this up. So we're going to include our DB underscore connect class here .php. And oh yeah, you're going to close out. You're going to say return null, and you're going to close all this out here. So curly brace, semicolon, and question mark greater than simple. Closing the PHP tag. There we go. So it closes all that stuff. We're good to go. Alright, back here. We're going to include DB underscore connect class here. We'll put single quotes around it and do a .php at the end of it there. We'll include that in here. And we're going to say $connect equals new DB connect, open close parenthesis, semicolon. And we're going to do the same thing with database users. And we're going to do the same thing for username equals Nate. And we're going to do the same thing for password, setting the password. We're going to go ahead and echo out the connect arrow over to host here and concatenate that with BR tag. Go to the next line, it'll display that it'll be a local host here. And then we're going to connect and do a test connection, make sure it's working. And yep, just type all that up, and if it works, then you can always just swap this easily to connect for it working inside database. So if I come in here and I say something like Nate slash test DB connect PHP, check it out, local host, right? Resource ID 1, connection was successful for our database, and then we were able to select our database. We're ready to do queries. So everything went perfectly fine, wonderfully. So really great way of testing that. And then the fun part about that is afterwards, you can just comment out a line like that, copy and paste it, right? And delete. Whoa, maybe not that much. Huh. Really not what I was going for. Alright, bam, test. Connect, and then this will just work and be silent in the background, so you won't even see it happen. Bam. So localhost is the only thing that appeared because I made it display. But otherwise, forget it, nothing else is going to display because I echoed that out right there. Otherwise, nothing else is going to display. So running connect like this, it all worked perfectly fine. You just don't see the results of it. So that's why you need to test connect, so you can test your your code to see if it's working. And it allows you to have a testing framework, and this saves you so much time and so many errors. It's not funny. Oh my gosh, does it ever? All right. So there's that. Okay, cool. All right. So next will be the insert one. And you know what? I think I'm going to break this into another video. So we'll have this up on the next video after this one. Okay, cool. But we're building up to what we need.